Hey everyone, how's it going? Glad you're here. All right, let me set the stage first, because to talk about the ending of Quake 4, we need to remember what Quake 1 was really about. Not just vibes, but intent. Quake 1 wasn't sci-fi. It wasn't military industrial Strogg warfare. It was pure Lovecraftian nightmare fuel. You weren't fighting an empire, you were fighting things that should not exist. Slipgates tearing open reality, rusted castles floating in voids, flesh, runes, eldritch geometry that didn't obey logic. And at the center of all of it was this looming, half-understood god entity, Shub-Niggurath. Not a villain you conquer in a heroic sense, more like a parasite reality finally coughs out. Quake 1's enemies weren't conquerors, they were infections. And the whole theme was cosmic horror. Humanity poked at dimensions it didn't understand and got noticed. Now fast forward to Quake 4. On the surface, Quake 4 looks clean-cut. Strogg this, Strogg that. Military briefings, ranks, objectives, planetary invasion. But here's where things get interesting. The ending quietly pulls the rug out from under all of that. Matthew Kane kills the Macron. He destroys the Nexus. The Strogg hierarchy collapses. And then he gets new orders. That moment always felt off to me. Because narratively, Quake 4 should end with relief. Victory. The war machine is broken, but instead, it ends with unease. Kane isn't discharged. He isn't celebrated. He's redirected. What if those orders aren't about mopping up Strogg remnants? What if they're about something returning? Because think about it. The Strogg don't behave like a civilization with culture or ambition anymore. They behave like a system, a machine with no memory of why it exists, which lines up perfectly with the idea that the Strogg are the descendants or remnants of Quake 1's humanity, long divorced from their original purpose. So what happens when that system collapses? It creates a vacuum, and cosmic horror loves vacuums. Shub-Niggurath was never truly destroyed in Quake 1. It was banished, disrupted, pushed back through unstable dimensions. Lovecraftian entities don't die, they wait. And the slipgate technology, the dimensional tiering, the constant interuniversal warfare, that's basically ringing a dinner bell. So Kane's new orders might not be continue the war. They might be prepare for contact. Because the forces from Quake 1 aren't an army. They're an ecosystem. A pantheon of horrors that doesn't need infrastructure, only access. And now that the Strogg Nexus is gone, now that the industrial noise of their empire has gone quiet, reality itself is vulnerable again. This is where the story side kicks in. Imagine Kane post-Quake 4. He's already half Strogg, half human. He hears echoes, not the Macron this time, but something older, something that predates Strogg, predates slipgates being used as weapons. Kane isn't just a soldier anymore. He's a bridge, a living interface between flesh, machine, and whatever waits beyond dimensional space, which makes him the worst possible or best possible person to face a returning Shub-Niggurath. Because Quake 1's horror wasn't about conquest, it was about corruption of reality itself. And Quake 4 ends right when reality is most exposed. So those final orders, I don't think they're about another battlefield. I think they're about containment, or reconnaissance, or a last-ditch effort to stop the universe from looping back to its oldest nightmare. Quake 4 doesn't close the book, it reopens the first chapter. And if that's true, then Kane isn't just humanity's last soldier against the Strogg, he's humanity's last witness. Before the gods that haunted Quake 1 come back to reclaim a universe that never really escaped them. And here's where it all escalates fast, because once Shub-Niggurath actually arrives, it becomes brutally clear that the Strogg were never the apex threat. Not even close. Her forces don't fight like an army, they overwrite reality, weapons jam, sensors lie. Entire battalions of Earth's global defense force get erased in minutes, not because they're outgunned, but because the rules they rely on just stop applying. Orbital cannons fail, shields buckle, cities don't fall, they rot. Compared to this, the Strogg look almost crude, industrial, predictable. And that's the moment Earth's command makes a decision they swore they'd never make. They stop seeing Matthew Kane as a liability. They see him as a solution. Because Kane isn't just a survivor of Stroggification, he's the only human who can interface with Strogg systems without losing himself. His implants, his neural architecture, his half-finished conversion, all of it suddenly matters. With the Strogg Nexus destroyed, their remaining forces are inert, dormant, a galaxy-spanning war machine with no pilot. So Earth does the unthinkable. They wire Kane back in. Gameplay-wise, this is where everything flips. Kane isn't just fighting anymore, he's commanding. You can summon tactical transfers into the field, reposition them, order suppressive fire. Limited deployments of heavy hitters too. Heavy hover tanks, gladiators. Not endless, but enough to feel the weight of what you're wielding. You're not spamming units, you're managing a dangerous asset. Story-wise, Kane plugs directly into the Strogg data network and becomes the new Nexus. Not a tyrant, not a god, a warden. From that point on, death doesn't work the same way. When a body falls, you don't die, you switch. One moment you're a tactical transfer clearing corridors, next you jump into a gunner holding a choke point. Later, a Strogg engineer repairing a defensive line under fire. Kane's consciousness flows through the network like a signal, inhabiting whatever unit is still operational. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. You're no longer the most important thing on the field. Certain missions force you to protect human squads, scientists, soldiers, evacuation teams. If they die, it's mission failure, no matter how many Strogg units you still control. It's a constant reminder you're using the Strogg, not becoming them. Cross that line and you lose everything you're fighting for. Then there are the big moments. In certain levels, Kane doesn't just deploy units, he awakens titans. Colossal Strogg war forms that haven't been activated since the old empire fell. And when Shub-Niggurath's equal-sized monstrosities tear through the battlefield, it becomes kaiju-level warfare. City-sized horrors clashing, reality bending with every step. The gameplay shifts into something brutal and mythic, like the Doomslayer piloting at lands in the Dark Ages, but colder, heavier, more mechanical. No glory, just survival. And finally, the end. Kane confronts Shub-Niggurath not with guns, not with armies, but with will. A battle that isn't about damage numbers, but control. She can't be killed. Kane knows it. She's older than weapons, older than wars. Destroying her would just scatter her across dimensions again. So he does the only thing left. He binds her. Eldritch magic scavenged from her own domain, fused with Strogg containment tech, runes etched into machines, logic engines designed to cage something illogical. A prison that exists half in reality, half outside it. Not a victory. A stalemate. And Kane stays connected, because someone has to hold the lock. The game doesn't end with a parade. It ends with Kane watching over a universe that will never be safe again. Part human, part machine, standing between order and the gods that wait beyond the slipgates. Not a hero, not a monster, just the last thing holding the door shut. And that's when the quiet betrayal drops. Shub-Niggurath is sealed. The war is technically over. Earth is still standing, barely. You're still plugged in, still holding the lock, still breathing through machines and borrowed bodies. For the first time in a long while, there's no gunfire in your ears. Instead, you hear voices. Command traffic. High level. Not meant for you, but you're the Nexus now. There's no such thing as private channels anymore. They're talking about you like you're cargo. They talk about how efficient the Strogg infrastructure still is, how their foundries, their slipgate logistics, their automated war factories could be repurposed, how remnants of Shub-Niggurath's forces, stripped, dissected, reverse-engineered, could be turned into containment engines, bioreactors, weapons platforms, fearless labor, endless supply, no dissent. And you realize something that hits harder than any Macron ever did. They didn't save the galaxy. They won it, and now they want to industrialize it. You're not a hero to them anymore. You're an asset, a control interface. A living key they haven't figured out how to replace yet. The moment they do, you know exactly what happens next. Disconnection, containment, autopsy. Someone will write a report about how useful you were. That's when the game gives you the final choice. No speeches, no dramatic countdown, just a moment of silence and two paths. First choice. You burn it all down. You overload the Strogg network from the inside. Foundries collapse, slip gates implode, command relays go dark across the galaxy. Entire Strogg systems fall silent in a cascading failure that can't be stopped. No more conversions, no more logistics, no more war machine. The galaxy is finally free of the Strogg, but not free of consequences. Earth brands you a traitor immediately. A rogue hybrid who destroyed the greatest strategic asset humanity ever possessed. Orders go out, terminate on sight. You don't run, you can't. You shut yourself down and let them come. They execute you fast, but what comes after isn't mercy. They cut you open. They catalog every implant, every interface, every trace of what you became. Your name fades from official records. Your closest friends mourn you quietly, privately, knowing you saved more worlds than anyone will ever admit. Everyone else just remembers you as a failed experiment, a freak Strogg who went rogue at the worst possible moment. The Strogg die with you. So does your legacy. Second choice, you stay in control. You sever Earth's command authority from the network before they can touch it. Strogg units mobilize, not against monsters this time, but against human fleet's bases, command hubs. You don't enjoy it. That's the worst part. You remember these people. You fought beside them. You trained with some of them. Some of them know your voice. You protect yourself because you know what they'll do if you don't. You tell yourself it's temporary, necessary, that once the galaxy stabilizes, once the threat is gone for good, you'll stand down. But wars don't work like that. Your friends become targets. Some hesitate, some don't. And the Strogg don't hesitate at all. Worlds burn. Not in eldritch madness, but in cold, calculated suppression. Humanity survives under your shadow. You become something worse than the Macron ever was. Not a tyrant driven by instinct. The galaxy stays safe, but only because you're willing to do what no one else will. And you know deep down that history will never call you a savior, only a monster that chose itself over its species. Either way, the ending doesn't fade out on victory. It fades out on loss. Because the truth is, Matthew Kane was never meant to win. He was meant to end something, and in doing so, become something the universe doesn't know how to forgive. No good endings, just consequences, and the quiet understanding that in a universe shaped by gods, machines, and war, the most terrifying choice is the one you make willingly. And that's where I'll leave it. Not with a clean victory screen, not with credits rolling over a triumphant score, but with that weight sitting in your chest, the kind Quake has always been good at. The kind that makes you stare at the wall for a second after the game fades to black and ask yourself whether you actually did the right thing, or if there even was a right thing to begin with. Because Quake, at its core, has never been about saving the universe. It's about surviving it, and realizing that survival has a price. In Quake 1, you were a lone marine throwing yourself into impossible Lovecraftian hellscapes where the gods didn't care whether you lived or died. In Quake 4, you're not just fighting monsters, you're becoming part of the machine that makes monsters possible. And in this hybrid story, you're the hinge point of the entire franchise. The moment where eldritch horror, industrial warfare, and human desperation collide. I love this idea because it brings Quake full circle. Shub-Niggurath isn't just a boss you shoot until it stops moving. She's a force you can't erase, only contain. The Strogg aren't just villains. They're the end result of a civilization that made the same choice humanity is this close to making again. And Matthew Kane isn't a power fantasy. He's a warning. A man who wins by losing pieces of himself until there's barely anything human left to call a victory. And that final choice? That's the most Quake thing imaginable. No heroic ending, no parade. Just two roads paved with betrayal, one where you die clean and are forgotten, and one where you live on as something the universe might need, but never forgive. That's the kind of ending id Software would absolutely flirt with. Bitter, cosmic, quietly cruel. So if this kind of theory-story blend is your thing, if you like digging into old ID lore, connecting Quake to Doom, peeling back the layers of horror, sci-fi, and existential dread, stick around. This channel is all about that space where gameplay ends and the implications begin. Where the real monsters aren't always the ones with claws, but the systems we build to feel safe. Drop a comment and tell me which choice you would take. Burn the Strogg forever and die a traitor, or stay in control and become the thing everyone fears to keep the galaxy standing? I genuinely want to know, because there's no easy answer, and that's the point. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe for more deep-cut Quake, Doom, and ID Software theory dives, and share it with someone who still remembers what Quake felt like the first time it messed with your head. I'm Myth Knight, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.